World of RPGs, Episode 10, Hungary, Part 1 of 2. Welcome to the World of RPGs, a podcast in which we travel around the globe and learn about the local role-playing game scenes. I'm your host Mo Baltz, and in Episode 10 we are going to Hungary. I'm going to keep the intro short because we again have a double episode, and it could have been even longer because I asked around a bit and got more recommendations than I could handle. In part 1 we get a general overview, and in part 2 some more specific projects. I also keep this short because I've never been to Hungary and can't share any story here. It's a country in Central Europe with about 10 million people. The majority religion is Catholic Christianity with a sizable atheist and Protestant population. They use the Latin alphabet, but Hungarian is not an Indo-European language and in fact distantly related to Finnish and Estonian. Since the writing conventions are a bit counterintuitive if you've learned how to read Polish, I'll not even try pronouncing any names or game titles. For Hungary, I couldn't get in touch with the people from the actual play channel from the teaser, so let's begin with an organizer.
My name is Nicolette Varga, but everyone knows me as Wendy. That's my nickname for quite a long time now. Well, I always loved to make beliefs and storytelling and play and whatsoever. And my very first encounter with role-play game, I believe I was about 8, 9, maybe 10. I'm not sure about that. Only I know that one of my friends there had an older brother who got a book called Shadowrun. I'm not sure which edition was it, but he got it down to the playground and showed it to us, and I was amazed. The artwork was amazing, it seemed interesting. In the end, we used the artwork as, okay, I will look like this girl and we will do this and that. We didn't use any dice, we just played our own games in our own head and running around like crazy in the playground. That was the very first time I had this experience. And later on, I think about university when I met again. This time it was Vampire the Masquerade. And one of my friends showed it to me and talked about it. And at the same time, I met Réka Kocsmáros and his then boyfriend, Tamás Klincsok, or Anatol, as everyone knows him. And we talked about it, and she offered me to join to play. And I was so excited, and yeah, that's how it started. I joined her, and we started to play. It was about 2011 and 12, somewhere in the middle of it. And we started the vampire campaign, just the two of us at first, in the summer of 2012, I believe. And shortly after, I went abroad to work to Scotland, and we continued it online. So that was my very first real game experience with them, with her, with a few other friends. And I basically met all the role-playing scene through them. So that's how I was introduced to the game and the hobby.
And which games do you play now?
Literally anything I fancy. So I became a GM myself. I usually talk about GMing the game called Little Fears Nightmare Edition. It's about characters between 6 and 12. And, you know, the world is a scary place. Monsters are real, and you have to encounter them at some point. And it's a very fun game because for a child, even the basics of things can be scary and supernatural or whatsoever. So it makes it really fun and easy to give a very interesting atmosphere to play in. If I'm not GMing, I play, Cult, which is, horror, body horror. It can be very gore sometimes. It can be psychological sometimes. It's very interesting. And my favorite GM in that game is Don, or Donát Pálinkás is his real name. He makes it very special every single time. Other than that, I like to play Vampire if I can. I like Changeling. It's a very, very interesting game. And World of Darkness's world is a very, very good one. So I like to dip into it if I can. But really, I try out everything I find interesting. Like, there's a game where you can play basically everything. Like, if you are just rich, you're a character and you're good. It's the Seven Seas, I believe that's what called. I tried to GMing another game, Aberrant. It's not really a new game. It's basically about people became mutants. Not all of them, but a lot of them. It's kind of an X-Men kind of game. But I just couldn't grasp it the right way, so I don't really GMing it, but maybe someday.
Many of these games are horror games and take place in kind of the real world. If you play them, where are they situated? Will you play them in Hungary or in the US or somewhere else?
Most of the games we play, it's either in America, like the campaign we played with Reka was based in New York, in a, well, not exactly the same New York. I mean, we had a few different locations, like, as it goes, new shops, new apartment buildings, things like this, but basically in New York. When I GMing Little Fears, it's either in an imaginary city called Sunset Hill or in Portland, Maine. And I love both games really. It's very, very interesting. And most of the time, it's usually America or maybe in the UK somewhere. It's very, very rare to be closer to Hungary. Like, we had a vampire game in, I don't know very exactly, maybe the Czech Republic, maybe somewhere there. But I don't think we ever played in Hungary.
And for Changeling?
America, definitely America.
Now, I heard you're connected to some conventions or events. Can you maybe say a little bit about that, what you're doing there?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, I was introduced to role-playing game through Reka and Anatol. A few of us really liked this hobby, and after I moved back from Scotland to Hungary, we had a few discussions about the topics, and kind of like, it is very fragmented and very small communities existed in Hungary. We had one in Budapest, there is one in Nyíregyháza, there is one in Szolnok. It wasn't connected really. So we were thinking we would like to make a new place, something which even newcomers or veterans can enjoy and have friendly topics, helping each other, like a cafe. Like, you just sit down, enjoy your coffee, and talk about your favorite hobby. So, after some discussions in 2014, we made this group, Shadowsphere or Árnyékszféra, as we call it in Hungary, and it literally is a Facebook group. At first, we just started to organize little events. One of our members, Anatol, is a librarian, so we had a few library events like, hey, we have this amazing hobby and we'd like to introduce it to you. Would you interested in it? Would you like to hear about it? And they wanted to. I mean, it was surprising how many people come to these conventions, and sometimes there were teenagers. We had grandma with younger boy coming to this, and it was very exciting to see that. After that, our first anime convention was in Debrecen, I believe, where we had the same kind of stuff. Like few of us just started to talk about the hobby in front of an audience, tell them about why it is good, what kind of games we know, how it should be, how it can be. And you can join us in the Facebook group if you would like to. And our numbers are increased pretty quickly. So, yeah, that's how it started. And we started to work with a cafe called Hammer Time Cafe quite early on. And they offered us a place to play and advertising us and vice versa. So we had our first event, which became a monthly event in 2016 in November. It's called Wanderers of Spheres, which is Sférák Wanderai in Hungarian. So we started it, we had quite a lot of people. And since then, we have our monthly events. We play many, many games. We organize this. And right now, our Facebook group is about 1,800 people, or even more than that. And we kept going on. Like when the COVID hit, it hit very hard, but we still went with these monthly events just online this time. And it was still a very good number to play with, to tell a story. It was very, very good. And since then, we tried many things, like we are going on Mondocons, every single one of them, if we can. It's organized in Budapest every 3 months, and we are going there. First, we went with Summertime Cafe, and now we are on our own, going with a newfound group. We organized them together, like Nerd Alliance. It has maybe three separated groups, and we talked to them and said, hey, we like your thing, you like our thing, so why don't we go together and have this huge part in the Mondocon and play with people and talk about the hobby and, help them if they need it. So every single MondoCon, we are going there, we are having fun. We have like about an hour session with many, many GMs. They tell us that, hey, we would like to go to the MondoCon and we would like to help just increase awareness of this hobby and tell us stories. So, okay, how many of you come? Okay, good. And maybe we have 8, 9, or 10 GMs. Every single one of them has a different story, a different world to tell, like cyberpunk or even D&D, whatever really. And they have an hour session with somebody who comes to look forward to playing. Sometimes it's 4 games after another. They have a little bit of a pause. Sometimes they need to go to the bathroom, they go to eat, they do whatever. And after they continue the session with another group. So it's very interesting to see it, how it grows and how it goes in these conventions, which is mostly about anime, not RPGs, but nowadays it is. It is a great thing. I love it. I love to see it. And also about these events, we have camp. We had our second summer camp this year. The first one was with the Hammer Time Cafe, and now we are on our own. And it improved a lot, and we still tries to improve it a lot. I mean, the first one was our first trial. Like, we never had this before. We never had a summer camp before, and we had to learn a lot of things, like how to organize it, how to make the people work together nicely. And it became very popular. It was demanded a long time before it, then it happened, and it just boom. So, yeah, that's how we do it now.
You said you're playing a variety of games. Are these all English games translated, maybe, or do you also have some unique Hungarian games among them?
Well, we have one or two. One of them is Magus, or Magus. It's a Hungarian game. It's quite an old one and still very popular. There are debates about which one is better, the older one or the newer one. It's a whole level of topic I don't want to go into right now. But yeah, we play that too. You know, about the games, a lot of them, if we can a hand on it, is translated. But if we can't, we read and learn it in English, but we play it in Hungarian. As I said, we worked a lot to make this community work, to make it connected. And through this, we get to know Zsuzsanna Molnár, who founded the very first online search engine in Hungary, which is called szerepjátékosok.hu. It is a very good one, and she's very actively helps the community as well. She's a very creative person, so she makes stuff like dice shaped candles or t-shirt designs and so on. We also have a very, very good few characters like Nandor Lakria, who is a very good LARPer and arranges high quality LARPs. For example, in 2019, there was an event in the Hungarian National Museum in the Roman exhibition, and Rika and I were there. We played in that, and it was great. It was very interesting and exciting with a good story. So yeah, I think they worth mentioning.
Since Wendy was mostly into imported games, let's hear a bit about the history and overall structure of the Hungarian role-playing game scene.
So my name is Gábor Csomós, and I'd like to greet all the audience who are listening to us right now. I am a 41 years old IT system architect and operations team lead, but I don't think that is really important. My gateway to fantasy gaming were the fighting fantasy game books, which were translated to Hungarian at the very end of the 90s and the early 80s. Me and my friend loved science fiction and fantasy movies and fantasy art and literature from a very early age, and I was a raving fan of Star Wars. So when I have seen the Star Wars D6 system in a shrink wrap on the shelf of a bookstore, which read game book on its cover, I thought it's going to be something like the fighting fantasy books. Well, I begged my parents to buy it for me, which they eventually did. And when I finally uncovered it and take a look into it, I was shocked because it wasn't what I was expecting. It was actually the Hungarian translation of the Star Wars D6 role-playing game. It seemed to be really complicated, and for a while I didn't get anything to do with it, but eventually me and one of my friends tried it out on a summer vacation and slowly got hooked on it. We've even experimented with playing it in a fantasy environment, leaving laser guns and spaceships behind, using the Force as magic and making up fantasy stuff. We actually used the game setting of the fighting fantasy books and the World of Titan as a backdrop for it. It was very good. Well, the Hungarian role-playing scene just experienced the boom in the meantime, and even some Hungarian role-playing systems were developed and released. The first one that was called Combat and Magic. Unfortunately, I never had the opportunity to try out, but we were able to get our hands on the second one that became the most popular, which is called Mágus. I think an English spelling individual would spell it like Magus or something like that. It was the real deal back then, a fantasy RPG with actual witches, wizards, and warriors and monsters. It was very nice, but about a year or so later, I got a hold of AD&D 2nd edition, and with that I somehow knew I have arrived home. Later, we tried all manner of game systems like Middle-earth role-playing, Vampire. Vampire had a huge following in Hungary in the 90s. Shadowrun, Warhammer Fantasy role-playing, etc., but we always went back to D&D. So, yeah, this is how it started for me on the mid-90s.
Were those translations or in English, like Vampire or Shadowrun?
These were actually translations. We had a very hard time buying English language books. There were a few bookstores back then, but those books were very expensive. I remember saving up our lunch money as kids for, I don't know, maybe about half a year, two of us, and we only managed to buy the Monster Manual for AD&D 2nd edition with that money, so it was really expensive. The Hungarian books were more accessible back then. And yeah, we had a few translations like all of these I have just told of. With the exception of Warhammer Fantasy Role-Playing, that was never translated, unfortunately. We had a translation of the third edition D&D, but let me be honest with you, it was not of a good quality. So we had the chance, and we almost had an official Hungarian translation of the fifth edition of D&D. We were very close to getting it, but something went southwards between Gale Force 9, the company to which localizations were outsourced to, and Wizards of the Coast. And the Hungarian publisher simply just never got the permission to release the Player's Handbook and the rest of the books, which were already translated. Actually, the guys who tried to publish it in Hungary did not want to make the same mistake as the previous publisher of third edition. So they asked some guys from the community to help them as advisors on how to translate the fifth edition. And I had the honor to be part of that group. And it was absolutely really hard to find some good terms for some of the monsters and the spells. And we had arguments at the knife's edge about how to translate some kind of monsters, mainly because we have words for some monsters, but like you, we have the same words for multiple of the monsters in the monster manual. So it was really hard. So yeah, it's not an easy topic. I'm just a little bit heartbroken that we never had the opportunity to release these translated books. But nonetheless, in spite of this, fifth edition is very popular now in Hungary.
And were there any like Hungary-specific supplements for games like Vampire or Shadowrun, or was everything just directly translated?
Well, I think that Vampire supplements were mostly just translated, but I remember having one supplement for Shadowrun that was called Árnyék Magyarország or Shadow Hungary, that was written by Hungarian people, and it was a supplement for this special market.
Did you read that one? So do you know what's inside?
Well, yeah, so it was a supplement about the country and how the goblinization affected it and what happened in the next few decades. I think, if I remember correctly, our nuclear power plant got a disaster and basically it turned into a second Chernobyl or something like that, but I couldn't recall the specific details because, well, we have always been D&D guys. We have tried playing other systems, but we always went back to D&D.
Are there any issues with the language, with translating, or is it easy? For example, how do you say game master? Is that the same meaning, or do you have a different word for that?
We say it like Kalandmester, usually, which means adventure master. This is a term that was coined by the most popular Hungarian role-playing game, Mágus, and it just stick to us. But since D&D was not translated at the time when we started role-playing, okay, so it's not really true. We had a Hungarian AD&D, but it was an unofficial translation, which people photocopied and given hand to hand. And we also had a variant of AD&D in Hungary, which was called the Ruby Codex, which was mostly an unofficially translated AD&D second edition with some additions like a new healer class and some new spells. And since the translations were never official, the terms never stuck to us. So most of the people who play D&D were the guys who know the English language, and they simply use the English terms for a lot of things. So we never really translated armor class and a lot of the monster names and such. But some terms are accepted in the community like they are. So everybody knows what we are talking about when we are saying AC, for example.
Yeah, another translation issue is the difference between wizard and sorcerer.
Yeah, we don't really have that many different words for magic users. So yeah, we have struggled with that also. And also with warlock, because the word associated to warlock is boszorkány. And in our folklore and tales, we usually use boszorkány to the female warlock, the witch. So it sounded really awkward to call a male warlock boszorkány in our language. So it was not easy.
I think that's what Andrzej Sapkowski did with The Witcher. He just made a male version of the word for witch, and it was then difficult to translate. In German, it's easy. You can make like Hexe for witch and then Hexer for sorcerer or witch lord. In German, it works. You can make a male form of witch. That's okay. But in English, it even doesn't work.
Yes, The Witcher got translated to Hungarian. I mean, The Witcher novels and short stories. I really like them, by the way. And I think that the Hungarian translation of Witcher was not boszorkány either. So they just made up a word from vajákos, which is something like a witch doctor or something like that. And, well, not all the fans of The Witcher like that translation, but eventually it got accepted, and it doesn't sound that bad.
Speaking of D&D, you also wrote some modules.
Well, actually, at first I was just playing with my home group up to until maybe 2010. And then I started participating in organizing conventions. And one of those conventions was a contest type convention. It was called the Dawn of Heroes. Well, actually, a guy just published an advertisement and we're looking for people who would participate in organizing these conventions. And its aim was to make D&D more popular. The actual edition of D&D was the fourth edition at the time. And I have said, okay, why not? So I just participated. And it was very good because all the occurrences of this convention was where we have written our own adventure module in cooperation with the organizers, and all the groups who entered the contest played the same story at all the different tables. And at the end of the day, a triggered encounter just closed the adventure, and then we ranked the contestants objectively based upon how many side quests they were able to wrap up before their time went out. So yeah, I participated in the organization and the adventure writing of maybe 15 of these conventions before I had to drop out. And since we were always writing our own adventures and published it after the conventions, this is when I started to build up some experience about writing practical adventures which are consumable by others. I have also participated in the organization of a few other conventions and created and published adventures that I have GM'd on these conventions later, but all of these works were Hungarian. Actually, I have maybe 4 titles in English. 2 of these are just small scenarios which I have published on my blog when I had the delusion that I will have time to run a blog, but I had to abandon it because I just had too much work at the time. So these scenarios never reached too much publicity. And I have 2 other modules that have been published in English. The first one is called The Lost Valley of Kishar. It came from a home campaign of mine and was reworked and submitted to an adventure writing contest we held in celebration of the 10th birthday of a system called Sword and Magic, or Kard és Mágia. This was the system that was created by Gábor Lux of the small indie publisher company EMDT. This system was made freely available for the Hungarian scene, and it single-handedly created a small but very enthusiastic and passionate and creative scene around it. So there was an adventure writing contest to celebrate its 10th birthday. I participated with this module and I managed to win first place. So Gábor was kind enough to publish it in print in both Hungarian and the English languages. Yeah, it was a labor of love for me. It kind of pulpy Lost World scenario with a few hidden secrets and the twist of cosmic horror. I'm really proud of that one. And the other one that got published is called Caught in the Webs of Past and Present. This adventure also came from a home campaign, which we played in Swords and Wizardry, and it was submitted to another adventure writing contest. This time it was organized by Prince of Nothing's first NOAD Punk contest. Prince of Nothing has a blog called Age of Dusk. He's a smart guy with style and opinions. I recommend the audience to check out his blog. Again, I managed to win first place, and the adventure was published by Prince in the NOAD Punk Volume 1 compilation. It is, by the way, free on Drive to RPG and has an additional 7 very good old-school style D&D adventures besides mine, so then again, I recommend to the audience to check it out. And if everything goes well, this adventure will get another publication by Gábor Lux, maybe in the fall, in print and PDF, this time with professional illustrations.
So you said you're involved in conventions. So how's the convention scene in Hungary?
Well, actually, the whole scene was a little bit emptied out at around 2010 for various reasons. And a few guys just thought that we should shake things up a little bit. The convention that I was participating in, one of those I have already talked about. And the other one was organized first by Mátyás Hartyándi, whom I think you will also be interviewing, or so I've heard. And they decided to make a small convention called Random Encounters for the then new Hungarian OSR community. So it was a full-day occasion where you had the opportunity to play different games at different people's tables, one session during the morning and in the afternoon. And it was a very nice convention because actually this was the first convention that I have participated in, and it was very nice to get familiar with new people, systems, new styles of play and new ideas. So Mátyás has organized 6 of these Random Encounters altogether, then had to quit, and me and 2 of my buddies, who I got to know at Random Encounters, by the way, decided to keep the tradition and started to organize conventions using this very same structure under the name Society of Adventurers. It slowly became a convention not focused that much on old school D&D. Roughly about half the tables played it and some other D&D-like systems, and the rest were playing other games. But it always remained a small event of maybe about 50 people or so. We managed to organize this convention 10 times before COVID hit. And a bit later, the data center that hosted our web server, which we used to advertise the games and handle registrations, burned to the ground. And also the other data center got damaged that hosted our backups. I'm not sure, you may have heard of the OVH incident in Strasbourg. It was that. And since then, we were on hiatus, but we are already working on organizing the 11th one in this November. And our new site is under construction. And for a very long time, I have only heard about a few more conventions in Hungary. There were role players who tried to bring the hobby to different type of conventions like anime conventions and such, but they never gained too much popularity up to until when the 5th edition of D&D arrived. And well, how to put it, D&D 5th edition kindled the flame of role-playing again and poured some kerosene on it, just to make sure. So it seems that ever since then, we are living in a new golden age of role-playing games in Hungary, and multiple conventions have been started since then, recurring conventions, I mean, and clubs have been formed, and a lot of people are creating video channels about role-playing, and there are a lot of newcomers. Most of the conventions here are not just about D&D, but other game systems as well, but of course D&D has a huge emphasis on it in our scene. And most of these conventions are small conventions, usually about 40 or 50 people or so. But we have a lot of these. And also some people are organizing summer camps that take longer than just one day or one occasion. They are from about 3 to 7 days. And all kinds of role players and war gamers and tabletop gamers are getting together and playing for a whole week. I think I have heard about 3 of these conventions. So yeah, community is back at it again.
So I really don't know anything about Hungary. It's like the only country in Europe I don't know anything about. And I've never been there. So are these conventions in the capital, or are they like also in other cities, or is there like a periphery and a center with differences?
Well, we have the greatest and most vivid scene in the capital, but there are a few conventions in bigger cities. I think there is one annual convention at Pécs, which is a southern city in Hungary. And I think maybe there are some clubs with regular meetings in Győr, I think, and maybe Szeged. And one of my friends, Gergely Dinnyes, who has a YouTube channel, which is quite popular in the D&D scene in Hungary, he's organizing workshops, which is about getting together, maybe playing a game or so, but discussing about game mastering and play styles, and throwing together ideas and learning something from each other. And he's trying to do it in a roadshow kind of way, you might say. Most of these workshops that he organized were in the capital, but he also tried to take it to Szeged. And the next one he's going to take to Győr, because there are small role-playing scenes here that he can work with. So, yeah, I think that the smaller towns and cities do not have such vivid scenes as the capital has, but we are working on it to make a bit of a difference.
And you also have a podcast, don't you?
Yes, actually, I do. One of my good friends and well-known persona of the Hungarian scene, Zsolt Varga, asked me if I wanted to make a podcast with him about role-playing. I said, yeah, why not? I like to talk with him, and I can talk endlessly about role-playing. So the show called Grognard Breakfast was born. It is a relatively new thing for me. We started it in January or so. We are over 40 episodes by now. We do not have a huge following, maybe about 200 people, because our conversations are rather personal and are very subjective, but we never really aim for popularity. As both of us has turned toward older editions of D&D lately, our topics are mostly about the original D&D, advanced D&D, classic adventures, old school play style, retro clones, adventure writing, house rules and such. So it's not too mainstream, but it makes me really happy.
And it's in Hungarian, just to make clear.
Yes, it's in Hungarian. I mean, regarding these topics, there are plenty of podcasts and YouTube channels already that you can consume in English. And we decided to talk to our little scene in Hungary in Hungarian and try to bring topics that are well known to the international old school scene, to the Hungarian scene, which may not be as familiar with it.
Gabor mentioned a couple of other Hungarian RPG activists. Let's see if I can interview all of them.
Hi, my name is Gergely Dinnyes, or more exactly Dinnyes Gergely, because in Hungary we use the names in the reverse order, which sometimes makes some confusion. So I started to play in 1991 with AD&D 2nd edition. My younger brother had a classmate who had an Italian father, some Western connection. So he managed to get a PhD and maybe some other books for AD&D second edition, which was 2 years old at that time. And it was quite a huge thing because behind the Iron Curtain before 1990, it was almost impossible or prohibitively expensive to get any Western things, not only RPG books, but anything at all. We had very strict rules about spending dollars or any hard cash, as we said, because Hungarian forints and other Eastern European money worth nothing for real. So it was a huge thing to get something from the West. But maybe this wasn't my first exposure to RPGs, because as maybe many or all Hungarian people from that era will tell you, the fighting fantasy books from Ian Livingstone, Steve Jackson and others was the first thing. We didn't thought it's an RPG because we didn't hear about RPGs then. But this was a huge thing in Hungary. It's called Kalandjáték Kockázat, which means adventure, game, risk. It's a 3-word thing. And I remember when the teacher got the book from me because I read it under my desk at the class, and it was borrowed from my friend, and it was a huge thing to lose such a valuable books for the teacher. So this was the first exposure, and after AD&D second edition for some years.
And which games are you playing currently?
I play a lot of games. I like a lot of games, but my main game is D&D and the 5th edition. I use it in a bit old school way, not the mainstream 5e type, but an OSR infected 5e games, which I usually play. Also, some games I'm very curious about, smaller games like even story games or micro games, and maybe I use some lessons from there to level up my game in D&D. D&D 5 is not my game because it's the best, but it's good enough and can serve well and quite accessible.
Is there a translation out in Hungarian of D&D 5e?
This is maybe the most important and most sad question you could ask. There was almost, but no. The story is a small Hungarian publisher got a contract with not Wizards, but Gale Force 9, which had a contract with Wizards to publish the Hungarian version, not only the core books, but 9 books altogether. They had to start it with the starter set, and it did hit the market. I was one of the few people who has a voluntary group of helping the translation mainly. And after the starter set arrived to the market, the Wizards changed their mind. They had a legal beef with Gale Force 9, and as not only the Hungarian but some other translation, it was stopped, it was banned almost, even the reprints of the starter set. So it was a very sad time a few years ago to have almost a Hungarian version of D&D 5e, but not to have it. So today the copies of the Hungarian starter set are sold for extreme prices. Maybe the most known Hungaricism in English language D&D is the use of one of the most well-known Hungarian historical figure, Lajos Kossuth. He is our hero of a revolution in the 1800s. He was a nobleman, a politician, a governor, and after the revolution was brutally murdered by the Russians, he fled to the USA. So in the USA, he was a well-known spokesman and role model for his views about the freedom. So many places and even small towns or villages were named after him, called Kossuth or Kossuth Falva or village of Kossuth, or have some statues here and there. So maybe some guys who lived in America in the 20th century met with his name, Kossuth, which for an Englishman maybe think as pronounced as Kossuth or something like that. And so he will become the Fire Lord of the Fire Realm of the Forgotten Realms pantheon, or a larger pantheon of the multiverse with this name, Kossuth, or something imagined by an American guy. Recently, I've made a small investigation who was the first to use it. Maybe it was Gygax, maybe it was another writer. But when the Hungarian translator found this name, he had a serious problem with that. So the back translation of his name was something else. You don't have so Hungarian. Almost every city and town in Hungary have a main square or something, or main street called Kossuth. And also the Fire Realm of the Forgotten Realms.
So what other translations are out there actually of English or other language games?
There were a Hungarian translation, an official one, of the 3rd edition D&D, but it's more than, I guess, 20 years ago. It's not easy to get a PHP for the 3rd edition, and that was also not only the main books, but many books, Forgotten Realms, World, and many other books. It was a strange and very good time to be a D&D player then. Before there were not official, it was a very shady business, but there were a 2nd edition or 2.5 edition PHB in Hungary, which was absolutely not official, but was in the shops. So it was a very strange business, a shady one, like all things RPG in the 19th in Hungary. And now there is a very strange situation here. Some publishers, smaller or even one-person publishers, and some bigger, flooding the market with RPG books in Hungarian, which was a huge problem before, the lack of the RPG books in Hungarian. But now they are flooded with so much books and systems and styles and everything. So none of it can get any bigger exposure. So I really don't understand the strategies of them. They are many, too many, and none of them can get any support, any material, any adventure, any maybe conventions or gatherings of people or organizing games. So I don't understand. I'm not in the shoes, but if I would them, I would stick 1 or maybe 2 games and have support to give support for everybody who wants to play it and get to know it and marketing it and so on. So it's a very strange situation, and maybe it's too cheap to translate and publish a book nowadays. So maybe it's a strange problem, but here it is. A very good example, the first one recently, was from a very small one-man publishing company, was the Blue Planet RPG. Did you hear about it?
I know the RPG, yes.
It was the first time I met with this RPG, so it's a good example of not the most mainstream games or the BAG RPG, also not really familiar with Rats in the Wall. Recently, not Shadowrun but Cyberpunk, and not Call of Cthulhu but Trails of Cthulhu. And maybe the most important one is Blades in the Dark, which is a bit different RPG. And I'm happy that the Hungarian public get to know such RPGs as Blades in the Dark. But I really don't know anybody who started to play after the Hungarian version of Blades in the Dark. I know people who played before from the English version, but not after the publication of the Hungarian one. It's almost certain there are some people, just not so much. There are some smaller ones. Maybe Fantasy Age had a Hungarian translation. I guess if Shadowrun and, of course, D&D had a Hungarian publisher successfully published, they were a huge hit, but they aren't.
So what about homegrown games? What about games originally published in Hungary?
The most important one is from Gábor Luk, Kard és Mágia, Sword and Sorcery, which is a game based off the OGL, the 3rd edition D&D OGL, but not anything like the 3rd edition D&D. The rules are very compatible, but the style is very old school. Not as old school as some OSR games, but in contrast with the 3rd or 4th edition. It is a very good game, very accessible, very easy to use. The Hungarian text is very good, and the DM advice are exceptionally good. even compared to any English material of such a style, of such area of publishing. So it is a very good game. And in the next month, it will be the publishing of the second edition of this game. It's totally free for download, the first edition. The second edition will be published in print, which is a huge deal for me, at least, I guess for many people. That is the most important game in Hungary, for me at least, but for many of us. It is not popular in the same time. Only with a smaller group it is popular because it has no any color, have no good graphics or something like that. Maybe this is not the best part of the game, so it's not evocative as book, as a item in your table. The text is very good, the game is very good, but not the book. Gábor also have a game called Helvetia, which is also very important and very good game, but a very niche game. It's about the fictional country of Helvetia, which is the 17th century's mythic Switzerland. And this is a game which had English and also Spanish translation. So it's the only game which is Hungarian first, but also, I don't say it's an international hit, but it's an international thing at least, and have a very specific style of play, a very, very fun way to play. The rules are very similar to the Kardis Mágia 3rd edition based game, but the style of the writing, the things in the game are very strange and funny. It is based on a type of card which in Hungary we use. Originally a type of playing card in Germany, I guess. We called it the Hungarian card, in contrast with the French card, which is popular almost everywhere in the world, I guess. And we had games with that card, but the figures in the card are from Switzerland. I don't know exactly why. So the game is inspired by the style or the evocation of this card game. I like this game very much. Every time I play it as a DM, I guess I have never been a player in a Helvetia game, but it's a blast and everybody likes it. But even more niche game than the Kardis Mágia game. Also, Gábor had published another game called Kazamatek and Kompániák, which are about dungeon crawling and a very simple, very OSR game. I think these are the most important Hungarian games nowadays.
So they're all by the same author?
No, the third one is not from Gábor, but he published it as he had experience with publishing games.
And you also do workshops on gaming, is that right?
Yes, I have a YouTube channel called Kockák és Sárkányok. It's more than 5 years old, and I had a video every week, except for summer, every 2 weeks. It's a one-man show and a group effort in the same time. I had very, very good partners to create interesting discussions, and it was a natural next step to have these people all together in one place and have an opportunity to talk about our hobby, to workshopping about our hobby, to share our knowledge. My theory is that it's almost a fact that everybody has some good tricks and some good ideas about the game, and I try to find the people with good ones and who are also kind people and ready to share their knowledge and ready to listen for others to their knowledge. So we have such gatherings in Budapest and in other Hungarian cities as well, so to make the Hungarian RPG scene not so Budapest-centric, at least.
So you said there are some tricks and that everybody has some special way. Have you found anything which you didn't find in any of the English channels or English books that you found out in Hungary?
It's a very good question. Is there anything especially Hungarian the way we play games? I think not in the way we play, but the cultural things we have in the game. I think every smallish country in Eastern Europe, or maybe everywhere, had some very specific, maybe random elements in their RPG history like the importance of fighting fantasy games here in Hungary, that style, that aesthetics which comes with the style, maybe that is not unique, but something we have in common, especially the folks who started to play in the early 90s. Maybe this one. I think based on Gábor Lux's work, the OSR scene is quite strong and have very good creative creators here in Hungary. So even who doesn't play OSR style games and doesn't know exactly the OSR movement have some information of theory about the game which are OSR related. Maybe this is a specialty because I've listened other countries' experience and I didn't encounter with the old school things so much there.
So what would you consider to be typical for OSR?
Maybe the exploration type games where the sense of wonder, where the interaction with the environment, city or forest or dungeon is important. The player skill is important. The dungeons are not just a place to fight, but the real factions, ecology or mystic history exists. So maybe this part of the game is something I would call old school, and also that the challenge for the players are high, not for the characters, but for the players are high. And so the reward, a feeling of accomplishment is greater, not just you get the next level, and the next level with your character, but you achieved something special if you survived it, if you get the thing, if you have the thing done, or get the crown or something like that. Maybe the newer generation who are first met the game via computer games or Critical Role are not so in this style of game, but we try to infect them with the joys of this style, and we had some success in it. And so my channel and my workshops are platforms for that type of conversation, and we also try and manage to learn from the younger generation, from another style, from another approach to the game. I think to understand the past of the Hungarian gaming niche, there is two interesting parts. The very first, I've mentioned it, is the lack of ability to have anything from the West. For example, I've played my first, I don't know, 10 years without any dice I have. My brother have both them, so the group had his or maybe another set. It was possible to buy it, but it was expensive. This position have some consequences. We had bootleg copies and bootleg translations and photocopies of things, and we have strange misunderstandings of the game because of the bad translations or the lack of translations at all. So it was a very strange and very funny type of play. And when I've listened your interviews with other Eastern European players, they mentioned it too. So it's a common experience. Then another things after this first era was the era of the Magus game. Maybe you heard that game, which was a D&D clone, but not exactly a clone, a D&D-like game, which has a very, very strange history with the bad feel in the mouth, with very legal troubles and shady businesses, and have a very loyal and good gaming group here in Hungary, even after 20 years of lack of any major publishing act in Magus business. So it's a very strange part and hate and love relation. I was first very happy when I could buy a copy of that in Hungary and started to play with the game. And after I discussed it about not the game, not the players, but the people who manage the RPG and the publishing company. So I lost my interest in RPGs for some years, and it's very similar for many players. And others, they managed to free themselves from the publishing company and play their hermetic games with ancient printed materials and have good fun. But it's very important to understand the situation here. And the strategy of that publishing company was D&D is for idiots. So everybody who plays not their game, who plays MERP or plays any other games are idiots or childish at best. So it was a very toxic type of marketing they used for marketing their material. And Make a Breach, these wounds are a bit closed now, fortunately.
So thank you for listening to the World of RPGs. A special thanks goes out to the Hungarian gamers who talked to me. The music was Battle of the Dragon by Thomas Mutziu. We'll do the proper outro after part 2, which you can listen to right away.